A union of the Ayushmann Khurrana Social-Dramedy universe and the Maddock Horror-Comedy Universe is least surprising. This collaboration almost seems like a delayed arrival, not only because of what they stand for, but how their journeys have progressed over the years. For example, the seeds of both were sown back in 2017-2018. Both were collectively responsible for turning a page in Hindi cinema by adding flavors to a culture of filmmaking that was saturated with masala movies. Both of them have also at some point run the risk of becoming formulaic and functional. Does the inevitable union of the two universes with Thamma turn out to be an irresistible combination or just a passable affair? Let's find out as we cut to insight. The idea of a cinematic universe is not one that I'm admittedly most fond of, and my issues are plenty. Promises of a narrative culmination tend to disrupt the rhythm of the storytelling of the film at hand. In Hindi cinema, it also screams of an elaborate scheme by production houses to arm twist the audience into watching the movies. I'm not afforded to invest in just one world at one time. But funnily, the whole shtick gets punctured in the context of Indian filmmaking and film viewing, where spoon fed storytelling needs to prevail to cater to the lowest common denominator. Every film of a cinematic universe has to work more so as a standalone film to be accessible. For once, our limitations as an audience force the filmmaker to up their game. Each character has to master his own sprint in order to pass the baton to the next one in this relay race of cinematic universes. But Thamma, starring Ayushmann Khurrana as Alok and RashmikaMandanna as Tadaka, takes off promisingly before it turns around and starts running in the opposite direction as Stree stands and watches in horror. Comedy comes from watching this sight unfold. Thamma opens interestingly in 323 BC, where Alexander is seen marching towards India with his troops to conquer the subcontinent. Given that the cause of Alexander's death is still a mystery, the alt history setup is exciting. But what comes after does very little to build on this singular theme. It keeps adding foundational layers and themes like it is meant to be a structure built horizontally rather than vertically. Cut to present day, Alok meets Tadka in a jungle where he is attacked by a bear and left to die by his colleagues. Tadka goes against her vampiric instincts to feed on blood and nurses him back to good health. There is an immediate attraction and sexual tension between the two. Given that Ayushmann plays a struggling reporter who plants stories and covers fake news, and that Rashmika plays a vampire, I'm sure there's a metaphor somewhere here about the blood-sucking nature of present-day Indian journalists. Only that explains the connection between these two characters. But we learn that in a post-independent India, the vampires of this land, or Betals, are forbidden from feasting on human blood because it is believed to be poisonous in the aftermath of what people did to each other during the partition of the country. This is some seriously heavy commentary from writers Niren Bhatt, Suresh Mathew, and Arun for a film that positions itself as a supernatural, fantasy, romantic, drama, social, comedy, action. And in that is the undoing of Thamma as a film. It throws the kitchen sink at the screenplay to make sure it becomes what it promised and was expected to be. You can almost sense the writers fretting over it. Is the script servicing enough to the Ayushmann Khurrana genre of social messaging? Is it doing enough for the social commentary of the horror comedy universe? Is it doing enough to stand alone in this universe? Thamma fails to commit to a theme. And therefore, the plot is too convenient. Alok can clearly see Tadka's supernatural abilities and tendencies, but dismisses them as her being exotic or athletic. In that, he comes across as moronic and devoid of any basic logic. When Alok finally learns about Tadka being a vampire, it is too late for us to take this character seriously and root for him. The dialogue is not too clever either. An attempt to make a punchline out of every phrase, idiom, or metaphor around blood is funny at first, but gets lousy and bloody annoying real quick. Towards the end of the film, the dialogues are nothing but log lines for the upcoming films of the universe. This level of screenwriting is truly unacceptable in a mainstream Hindi film in 2025 where the plot doesn't progress the film as much as it regresses the medium. This three-sized hangover is unmissable too. A man attracted to a woman who is a supernatural being fighting an evil that may or may not be a victim themselves. A predictable twist anchored around the interval point in Thamma is directly inspired from Ravan, another fantasy action film that inspected the idea of a collective good defeating a bigger evil. There is a token addressed to bigotry as well, when Paresh Rawal, who plays Alok's father, asks Tadka why she couldn't find a companion from her own community. This also seems inspired by Rawal's own antics and his recent and upcoming filmography. There is so much of this subtext in the film's veins, and it runs so close to the skin of the screenplay that after a point I started searching for it even in scenes where it was probably not intended, like a subtext thirsty vampire with heightened senses. For instance, in the scene where Alok and Tadka are being chased in a Renault by a bunch of entitled and lecherous goons who ride a Mahindra. Why are the protagonists in a foreign manufactured car and the goons in an Indian one for a film that started with the idea of foreign invaders being neutralized by local fighters? I may have read too far into that one. But the film forced me to. It tries to say so much about everything and ends up conveying very little about anything. Is it about the cost and value of our independence? Or is it about the poison within us and our society that even vampires would like to stay away from? It is so cluttered with messaging to find one defining takeaway thought from the film. Having said that, there's no denying that there are some bits which are funny and clever, especially one where vampires identify each other by showing their fangs and shouting out a vampiric greeting of some sort. The gag is so self-aware in its stupidity that it made for a good laugh, which is to suggest that the film could have used more of this. After all, the genre is supposed to weaponize comedy to inspect the implausibility of imagined horrors and unveil the reality of horrors within us. Instead, we get a whole sequence towards the end of the film which takes an emotional leap of faith into the space of romantic drama loosely inspired by Brahmastra, which falls flat. And this lack of depth is also a consequence of the inert performance of Rashmika For once, I felt like her exotic Hindi accent was put to good use by the setting of the film and her character. It seems like an intuitive casting choice. But even that upper hand is quickly defeated when she finds herself amongst other actors who play vampires, like Faisal Malik and Nawazuddin Siddiqui, who is the best performance in the film but hidden in a dungeon for the longest time. Nawaz puts his addictively popular cackle from Kick to good use here. What's refreshing then is to see Rashmika not play a character that is in service of the male protagonist of the film. On the contrary, it is Tadka who saves Alok multiple times throughout the film, which is not only the essence of the Maddock horror comedies, but also the Ayushmann Khurrana template of a male protagonist requiring more help than providing it. Maybe her constant wide-eyed poker face throughout the film, her shock at possessing this level of agency manifesting itself into a performance, which is like the film itself. Does not work at all, but is fleetingly amusing to look at and evokes a few chuckles. Do let me know what you thought of the film in the comments section, and consider liking or subscribing the channel if you found the review to be insightful.